Money feels like a very modern problem. Inflation, exchange rates, credit scores, digital payments. The whole apparatus of modern finance sits so heavily on daily life that it can feel like something our ancestors were mercifully free of. They were not. The drive to track, exchange, and keep score of what is owed between people is ancient. Older than writing, older than agriculture, possibly older than civilization in any form we would recognize. But the story of how money actually began is not the story most people assume. The popular version goes something like this. First, humans bartered, trading fish for pottery and pottery for grain. Then, when barter got complicated, someone invented coins, and money was born. That story is wrong. Not partially wrong. Almost entirely wrong. The actual history of money begins with something much stranger and much more human than a coin. It begins with trust, with debt, with the social mathematics of who owes what to whom, running in human communities long before anyone stamped a face onto a piece of metal. That is what this is about. The barter-before-money story is so widely believed that most people are surprised to learn that anthropologists and economists have been unable to find a single documented example of it actually working as described. Not one society, anywhere in the recorded or archaeological record, has been found that operated primarily through direct barter exchange before adopting money. Adam Smith, the founder of modern economics, described barter as the natural precursor to money in 1776. The problem is that he appears to have invented it. The societies he cited as examples of primitive barter economies did not actually operate that way. When anthropologists went and looked at how real pre-monetary societies functioned, they found something completely different. They found gift economies. In hunter-gatherer communities, the dominant economic logic is not exchange. I give you this, you give me that of equivalent value. It is generalized reciprocity. You give what you can, you receive what you need. The accounting is social rather than transactional, and it is kept not in numbers but in relationships. A skilled hunter who brings back more meat than his family can eat does not trade the surplus. He distributes it. He gives it away. He builds obligation, status, and social bonds that will pay back over time in ways that cannot be precisely calculated. This is not naive generosity. It is sophisticated social technology. In a world without refrigeration, distributing surplus food rather than hoarding it is both practically sensible and socially productive. The community that eats together survives together. Barter, direct exchange of goods for goods of equivalent value between strangers, does exist. But historically, it appears not as the precursor to money, but as what happens between communities that do not trust each other enough for credit. Barter is what you do with outsiders. With insiders, you use debt. This is the argument that the anthropologist David Graeber made in one of the most important and controversial books about money ever written. His conclusion, after years of studying the evidence, was that credit and debt are almost certainly older than commodity exchange. The oldest written financial records in human history are not receipts for goods traded, they are debt records. Tablets from ancient Mesopotamia, dating to around 3000 BCE, show not people counting out grain for equivalent grain, but complex systems of credit, loans, interest, obligations, and the tracking of what is owed across time. Before there was money as a physical object, there was money as an idea. The idea that value could be abstracted from any particular thing, that a promise could substitute for a physical good, that obligation could exist between people in a form that persisted beyond any single transaction. This is a deeply social concept. It requires trust. It requires memory. It requires a shared belief in the validity of promises. And it appears to have been operating in human communities long before the first coin was ever struck. Before coins and before formal debt systems, there were objects that began to function as protocurrencies. Items that were rare, portable, durable, and widely desirable enough to serve as a medium of exchange across communities. The oldest candidates we have found are shells. Cowrie shells, small, smooth, naturally uniform, and visually striking, were used as a medium of exchange across an extraordinary geographic range. They appear in burial sites in China dating to around 1200 BCE. They circulated as currency across Africa, South Asia, and parts of the Americas for thousands of years. In some parts of Africa, cowrie shells remained in use as currency well into the 20th century. But cowrie shells are not the oldest evidence of prehistoric exchange behavior. Spondylus shells, harvested only in warm coastal waters, have been found at prehistoric sites thousands of kilometers inland across the Americas, Europe, and Asia. The distribution of these shells, which could only have traveled through repeated long-distance exchange, suggests that trading networks connecting distant communities existed much earlier than most people assume. Obsidian, a volcanic glass that can be worked into extraordinarily sharp tools, is another. Obsidian sources are geologically specific. The stone can only come from certain volcanic regions, and yet obsidian tools appear at prehistoric sites across enormous distances from their sources, going back over 100,000 years. Someone was moving obsidian across vast distances for a very long time. These exchanges did not necessarily involve what we would call currency. They may have operated through gift exchange, alliance networks, or reciprocal trading relationships. But they demonstrate that prehistoric humans were engaged in long-distance economic behavior of significant sophistication long before anything that looks like formal money appeared. The transition from protocurrency and credit systems to something recognizable as formal money happened, as far as the archaeological record shows, in multiple places independently. In Mesopotamia, by around 3000 BCE, silver was being used as a unit of account. The shekel, the word originally meant simply a unit of weight, allowed value to be measured and recorded across transactions of completely different goods. A debt recorded in shekels of silver could be settled with grain, labor, land, or any other valuable commodity that could be converted to the equivalent weight. This is a conceptual leap of enormous significance. The shekel was not primarily a coin, it was an abstraction, a unit of value untethered from any specific object. In China, bronze and copper coins appear from around 1000 BCE, though the cowrie shell preceded them as a currency medium. In Lydia, a kingdom in what is now Turkey, the first coins as we would recognize them, small, standardized stamped pieces of electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver, appear around 600 BCE. The Lydian innovation was the stamp, a mark of authority guaranteeing the weight and purity of the metal. This is money backed by institutional trust. From Lydia, the idea spread with extraordinary speed across the ancient world. Within 2 centuries, coins were in use across Greece, Persia, and India. The technology of coin money, once invented, spread because it solved a real problem: how to conduct exchange with strangers you do not know and cannot trust at scale with reliability. So, when did ancient humans invent money? The honest answer is that they never invented it in a single moment. Money did not arrive, it accumulated. It began with the social bookkeeping of gift economies. The running tab of who had given what and to whom, tracked not in numbers but in relationships and obligation. It built into protocurrencies, objects that could carry value across communities that shared no direct relationship. It formalized into units of account and debt systems that allowed value to exist as an idea, independent of any physical object. And it crystallized finally into coins, stamped metal carrying the guarantee of an institution, enabling exchange between strangers at the scale that civilization required. What is remarkable is not that money was invented. It is that the impulse driving it, the need to track value, obligation, and exchange, appears to be so deeply human that it predates almost everything we associate with civilization. The desire to keep score of what is owed is not a product of capitalism or modernity or greed. It is a product of being a social species that depends on cooperation between individuals who cannot simply trust everyone they encounter. Money is, at its core, a technology for extending trust to strangers. And the need for that technology appears to be as old as the need for strangers at all. Like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos. I'll see you in the next one.